The first batch of Clinton emails, the ones that were saved anyway, are released. We have the details. Will we see a compromise out of the Senate on a surveillance bill? The White House hopes so. Our own Rick Unger unleashed again in New York City to talk to the masses about Memorial Day. Governor Mike Huckabee stands by child molester Josh Duggar. Will this move hurt his chances for the White House? We talk about that and more. This is The Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And on the Wrap, my co-host and Sirius XM radio host, Rick Unger, back from the streets unscathed.
Back from the streets.
To his right, Philly attorney and America's pundit. She is Heather Hansen. She's back. And finally, she's the co-host of Close Encounter, and you're not, Lisa Jandovitz, with glasses tonight. Always changing her brand. Back again.
Get that different look every time.
It's true. Big Friday, everybody. Let's do the daily download. Today, 300 emails released from the Clinton camp, more than 54,000 ago. The State Department has released nearly 300 of Mrs. Clinton's private emails pertaining to the events before and after the 2011 Benghazi attack. But Republican Congressman Trey Gowdy, chairman of the Benghazi Committee, is clearly unimpressed. In a statement, he says, and we quote, "To assume a self-selected public record is complete when no one with a duty or responsibility to the public had the ability to take part in the selection requires a leap in logic no impartial reviewer should be required to make." At a campaign stop in New Hampshire today, Clinton talked about the email release.
I'm glad that the emails are starting to come out. This is something that I've asked to be done, as you know, for a long time, and those releases are beginning. I want people to be able to see all of.
Now, Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings, who also sits on the Benghazi committee, had this to say about the emails, and we quote, "The American public can now read all these emails and see for themselves that they contain no evidence to back up claims that Secretary Clinton ordered a stand down, approved an illicit weapons program, or any other wild allegations Republicans have made for years." Very interesting Mr. Cummings knew that, considering they were just released. Anyway, some emails do reveal that shortly after the attack, Clinton was advised that it may have been connected to al-Qaeda and not a spontaneous reaction to an anti-Islam video. And we've also learned that one email release was classified by the FBI today, citing national security concerns. The email relates to reports of possible arrests in Libya. The email wasn't classified at the time, but it's raising questions now about the security of sensitive emails on Clinton's private server. Heather Hansen, is this a problem for Mrs. Clinton?
Listen, we ask that question every day,
We do,
and
don't we?
every day Rick says, no, it's not a problem.
That's why I
We
went
say,
to you
yes,
first.
it is a problem. But listen, I've read some of the emails, as many as I could get through this afternoon before we came here.
Your
and
eyes were getting very
oh
glazed.
my
Yeah.
goodness gracious. You know, there's some interesting stuff in there. Bob Gates, who we talked about last night, sent condolences to Hillary after the death of some of her staff, you know, after the Benghazi attacks, as did Netanyahu. Those were the only two that sent emails. I mean, there may have been phone calls. There's stuff like that that is interesting, but there's no smoking gun, there's no big bomb. You do have the note that the FBI has since classified some information. Just think, if she had just used the State Department server, all this trouble, you know, how many people, they've hired a huge number of people to go through these and scan these and check these, all at taxpayers' expense. It is just ridiculous, but there's no smoking gun that I've seen so
Oh,
far.
of course, and then there wouldn't be if you could control the evidence. Now,
That's
let me
right.
ask you a question.
Well,
Let me
yeah.
ask you a question as
I have lots
a
of fun
Democrat.
stuff here.
If Dick Cheney had done this and kept his emails on a private server, what do you think the reaction would be?
He would have been pounded.
Yeah.
No question. Yeah, listen, you have never heard me defend her doing that. I think it was a terrible mistake. But I do have to say this. First of all, Gowdy's statement is ridiculous. All he's saying is, why are we bothering? If you're not going to believe anything about the emails anyhow, and I take his point, she did go through them, she did erase stuff, well then why are we bothering to
He
collect
wants
them
the
and distribute them? Well, okay, so go for the server.
ask you
But
about-
I got
Yeah,
something
go ahead.
even bigger, because we talked about the email that she got suggesting that al-Qaeda might have been involved, right? And today, the conservative media is all over this. Do you know who that email came from? Sidney Blumenthal. Now this
To
is
H, by the way.
Yes, to H.
Interesting.
They're all
Right.
to H,
This
yeah.
is the same Mr. Blumenthal that for the past 4 days the conservative media has been pounding because he was sending emails to Hillary that she was redistributing, and he didn't work for the State Department. And why is she listening to him? And why is she passing these along? But when there's an email that suggests that Hillary knew 2 days after that it was Al-Qaeda, and she didn't announce it to the public, she didn't take Mr. Blumenthal's word for it without any research and announce it, now she held back information. The logic gap here is just ridiculous, and shame on people who are saying that.
We were talking before, and I just want to make this point quickly because we have to move on, about me having the ability to watch Game of Thrones and all these shows.
Yeah.
We talked about this right before we came in here, literally like 5 seconds.
All this time.
If she erased 30,000 emails, how did she have the time to even write 30,000 emails? When you're the Secretary of State, you're a busy
I think it was
person.
her
Emails, if you read these
Staff.
emails, it's please print.
Yeah.
Her
Okay.
emails
Yeah.
are not. The emails
Still
to her are a
30,000
little bit.
please
But
print.
30, yeah, it's.
But it's also her staff, I suspect, who played a larger role.
yeah.
Okay.
There's
Boy.
a lot from, not
Well.
that many.
And now, new questions about the Clinton Foundation. Check out this headline in the Washington Post. Clinton Foundation reveals up to $26 million in additional payments. The Post says the payments came from major corporations, universities, foreign sources, and other groups. Critics have questioned whether Hillary Clinton rewarded big donors from foreign countries during her time as Secretary of State. The latest revelations come a week after we learned Bill and Hillary made $30 million on speeches and book royalties since last year. Lisa, does this, boy, we always ask this question, should Hillary Clinton be worried about this aspect?
I don't know that she should be worried about it at this time. I would think normally, but it's Hillary, so I don't know that this is going to affect her. Again, this is another revelation of donations to the foundation. In this case, many of these donors, or it was listed as revenue, have ties to foreign governments. So it raises the question: is there any conflict of interest? Not only when she was Secretary of State, but should she become President of the United States? Is there a conflict of interest there with any of these donors?
Sometimes shavings make a pile, and where it just smells.
Not
You
gonna
know, I
matter.
know
And by
it's
the
not
way-
going to matter, but it's just a culmination of things.
Just some quick cleanup.
Quickly.
They did report it to the IRS. It's not about that. What they did was further violate the agreement with the Obama administration, where they promised to disclose those things. That was wrong. They shouldn't have done it. Big mistake. It's not going to matter, folks.
I'm just saying
say
they
that a
they
lot.
can't seem to stay on message. This is all we're talking about, all they're talking about. Anyway, let's talk about a potential Hillary Clinton challenger, Marco Rubio. Check out this headline in the not so conservative New York Times. Prospect of Hillary Clinton-Marco Rubio matchup unnerves Democrats. We'll ask Rick about that in a moment. So, yes, it appears that they're concerned about the 43-year-old son of Cuban immigrants could take Latino voters away from Mrs. Clinton. And they're also concerned about the generational divide. Mrs. Clinton turned 69 just before the election. Mr. Rubio, not very good at math, but that's 25 years younger?
Quite a bit.
Wow,
Yes.
yeah, so should Democrats be worried? That is our theme
Do
here.
I look unnerved? I'm testing here.
Okay.
Uh,
of all the candidates, who would concern you most if you're running the Clinton
Actually,
campaign?
Jeb Bush concerns
Bush,
me
really?
the most. I think Rubio is going to run into a buzzsaw should he get the nomination. There's much to be known about him in his early days in Miami that I don't think will be helpful. I understand the concern over Latino voters. I think Jeb Bush poses that same problem because his wife is Mexican.
Heather?
Yeah, I don't disagree about the concern over the Latino voters, but I think the generational thing is something that is going to be more of an issue. You know, just as, and the article talks about this, just as Barack Obama came along and went
McCain.
for the young,
Yeah.
you know, the young people and beat Hillary, and, you know, it is definitely going to be an issue, and it's an issue that Rubio is capitalizing on. You know, he talks about, I am the new generation, she is the old, and I think you're going to see more and more in that as we move forward.
I think the only difference between a McCain and an Obama, McCain looked old.
He did.
And
And he was
Obama,
cranky.
and yeah, and he looked like the get off
Yeah.
my lawn guy. And Obama, you know, before he was gray, looked, you know,
Right.
very, very young. Hillary, when you dress her up and you put the makeup on and everything, doesn't look
Except
old to
young,
me.
Young folks aren't going for Rubio. They might go for Rand Paul, but I don't think they're going for
I
Rubio.
think
Just
they
because
will.
he's young, they're
I
not
think
going
they
for him.
will.
It's not so much
He
his,
thinks
his,
old.
his age, though. It's what he represents, and I think that could be an issue for her. He represents, no matter how much, Hillary needs to distance herself from Barack Obama, but yet she can't completely because she served as Secretary of State. So he's about as far away from Obama, and he is the future, and he is
And
young.
he's a
So all of those
Republican.
things, exactly. But
Young people tend not to go Republican. They may go
depending-
Libertarian.
Well, it depending on his message, and he could possibly also take the Latino vote.
That's true. Gotta go.
Just a
Coming
bigger
up
chunk.
next, will Senate Republicans come up with a compromise for the controversial NSA surveillance program? We talk about that next. Stick around.
The administration continues to be quite concerned about the fact that the United States Senate has refused to take up and pass the common sense bipartisan compromise that was crafted in the House of Representatives.
And that's our daily visitor, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest, taking aim at the Senate, urging a vote to restore parts of the Patriot Act. It's a race against the clock. Domestic surveillance authorities expire June 1st, I believe. So a vote could come soon. Republican Senator Richard Burr, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, has released a compromise proposal. It would end the bulk data collection of Americans' telephone records by 2017 and would provide a path forward towards having corporations store telephone records, not government agencies. The House has approved a similar measure called the Freedom Act, which ends the data collection and replaces it with a more targeted program. Earlier this week, 2016 Republican Rand Paul did a mini filibuster in his attempt to block discussion on renewing the Patriot Act. Are Republicans going to be able to get their act together on what to do about the Patriot Act? Heather Hansen.
Well, sooner or later they're going to have to. I don't think that they're going to allow it to just lapse. I think that too many people have too many real safety concerns. You know, Loretta Lynch came out today and said that we would be less safe if they just continue to let it lapse. So I think that they might just kick it down the aisle a little bit, as they're wont to do whenever these issues come up. You know, you've got Chris Christie saying you can't enjoy your privacy and your freedom in a coffin, and then you've got Mike Lee calling that political pornography. I mean, the fights amongst Republicans on this issue are very interesting because I can see both sides. I can see the need for privacy. I personally think the Freedom Act is a good compromise, but I think that the Senate's probably not going to agree.
Yeah, what do you think is going to happen here? I think it's going to be kicked down the road for like 2 weeks like they do with everything else to buy time.
Well, let me first say, it tugs at my heart. It hurts me when I see Republicans fighting with one another. This makes
called
me
debate.
sad. Makes me sad.
Debate. It's a healthy
never happens on the
debate.
Democratic
Never
side.
happens on the
They're
Democratic
all
side.
lockstep.
Look, I quite honestly, I don't know what the difference is between the phone company having it and the government having it. But I'll tell you what I do find fascinating. When we have these weeks where we're going down to the wire on debt extensions, it's a soap opera, man.
Yeah.
People are freaking out, right? Nobody cares.
Well, right.
Nobody really
You know why they
cares
don't
about this.
Because they figure it's just going to go on anyway in
Yeah,
some capacity.
and they all look at it and go, yeah, the government's been collecting my phone calls. It hasn't made a difference in my life. I don't care.
I have made this point in a column a while back, and I completely believe it to this day. Americans don't really care about this topic as much as politicians do because they put their lives out there completely anyway. It's all on the Facebook, the Twitter. They're constantly sharing their
I
thoughts.
think you're absolutely right.
Right?
Right.
And you listen to my phone conversations, nobody's having phone conversations.
We are now conditioned to not care about privacy.
Exactly.
Exactly,
We expect it almost because we put everything out there anyway.
Yeah.
And again, no one below the age of 30 even has a freaking phone call.
That's right.
They're all texting.
Right. I've always told that to my kids. Anything that you put out there, don't think that's out there forever. I mean, anybody can retrieve that, and so, and they're all on social media. And I hope also that they can come to a compromise with that there's a way where people's civil liberties are, preserved, as well as having, national security. And I think I think that, as you said, that the Freedom Act makes sense. Again, I don't really understand, because from what I understand about this is that when they collect this data, that they're getting the number called, the person, who is calling,
Right.
the date, the time,
Not the
and
content.
not the content.
Correct. Right.
So.
And it's not been shown to lead to any arrests. I mean, that's a big argument against it. But I just want to go back to the point that no one cares. There is a vocal minority that does care. I mean, they think Edward Snowden is a hero, and they feel as though, it's the Rand Paul lovers who really feel like the government should not be in my business, and those people have
But
a
that's
little
a
less
very
vocal,
small
but they're
minority.
vocal. They're
Because I
vocal.
suspect if you asked most Americans, they'd go, Edward who?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think
This might
Edward
be an
Snowden-
idea for another package around
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
yeah, I
Somebody
would
open
be-
an
Edward
Explorer.
Snowden. Yeah.
And while Congress struggles to figure out what to do with the Patriot Act, a new Pew poll finds voters are underwhelmed by the new Republican-controlled Congress. What a shock. Just, get this, 4% say the new Congress has accomplished more than what they expected in the first 100 days. That's 4 in 100 people. 53% say lawmakers met their expectations, and about 1 in 3 say the new Congress has accomplished less than what they expected. It's a confusing poll. The same poll finds Republicans want their party to be confrontational with President Obama. 3 out of 4 want their party to take on the president more often. What do these poll numbers mean for Republicans? Let's ask the non-Republican at the table.
I love the first and the third one, because what did they expect was going to happen?
That's a good
And I'd like to meet one of the 4% who it's exceeded their expectations, but they really had low expectations. I mean, that's just those are great numbers. But the one that cracks me up the most is we want the Republicans to be more confrontational with the president. I honestly want to know how that's possible.
They have agreed with him on some issues, like
the ones
trade,
that they
for
agree
instance.
on, right. So Republicans would be going, yeah, we like this trade thing. Obama's right on that one. What is it that they want them to confront him on?
It's a general sentiment, not anything specific. Come on.
Well, I think it's the overall idea that he just continuously exceeds his authority.
And the Republicans continuously beat the you-know-what out of him for doing
they
it.
try and rein him in, but I think Republicans want him reined in more. I don't know how one does that, but we've got lots of lawsuits out there that maybe will do it.
I think it's also a general dissatisfaction with government that people have, the way government is working, and that's on both sides. That's with the Congress and that's with the president, that they want to see them working together.
It's amazing that, so we talked about a pay raise for Congress a couple of shows ago, and how they've only made the same amount, $174,000 a year for 7 years. And then we show polls like that, and then you say, well, of course they don't deserve a raise because look at the merits.
Performance.
But at a 90% clip, people who run for Congress and win, and then they run again, they win again.
Yeah. Right.
So everybody's dissatisfied, but they keep voting their people back in.
In a recent Rasmussen poll, interesting what you just brought up, people are satisfied with on a whole with their local representatives.
You want to solve the pay raise problem and get the government under control? Put Congress on a commission.
On a commission? Wow. Incentivized, like waiters and stuff. Coming up next, Mr. Unger hits the streets of New York to talk Memorial Day. Stay right there. Welcome back. AAA expects 37 million Americans to travel this Memorial Day weekend in search of the beach, barbecues, and other outdoor activities to kick off the summer season. But of course, Memorial Day is really about our nation's war heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice serving their country. The holiday first started as Decoration Day, 3 years after the Civil War in 1868. It was designated as a time to place flowers on the graves of the war dead. It wasn't until after World War I that the day was expanded to honor those who've died in all American wars. It wasn't until 1971 that Congress declared Memorial Day a national holiday. So now that you know the background, how about those on the streets of New York City? Our own Rick Unger found out.
And we're standing outside New York City's famous Bryant Park, where people from around the world and New Yorkers alike are getting ready to go off on their Memorial Day weekend, the official opening of summer. But we have some questions for them. We want to know, do they really know what Memorial Day is about, or is it just about beer, bashes, and hot dogs? We're here with Natalie Mazouz.
Yes.
Natalie, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
And where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
Okay, so here's a question I got to ask you. Do you know what Memorial Day celebrates?
I'm assuming it has to do with the war a couple years back.
So we're celebrating Colonel James Memorial, yes?
Yes, Colonel. Are you telling me that?
Well,
Or am I-
you know that, right?
Well, I don't want to make a fool of myself if that's wrong, but
Might be too late, Natalie.
Oh yeah, I am pretty sure it's too late now.
So we are here with
Julian
Julian. Want to give us your last name?
Lawrence.
True or false? In 1777, the United States troops fought a naval battle outside of Memorial, South Carolina. And that is why it was a battle we won. It was a tough one. And that's why we now have Memorial Day. True or false?
See, now you didn't tell me you were going to put me on the spot. Now.
Well, of course I am.
You didn't tell me this is going to be Jeopardy.
Come on, you can do this.
Or are you smarter than the fifth grader?
True or false? True or false?
Memorial Day. Woo. Now, I hope no one is watching this. I'm just going to go with true.
We are here with Ashley and Ari from New Jersey. Welcome.
Hi.
True or false? In the Battle of 1812, the Americans fought a battle in the South, outside of New Orleans, in the Memorial State Park, where we defeated our enemy after 7 days of brutal, brutal fighting. And it was that battle that first commemorated what came to be known as Memorial Day, because it was fought in the Memorial Mountains. True or false?
I clearly didn't pay attention.
You didn't pay attention in class? You don't know if it's true or false?
I believe maybe it's true.
I'm gonna say fall.
You say true.
Yes.
You say...
I'm gonna say fall.
You know what? One of you is right.
I would expect it.
So we've been having some fun with the folks here in Bryant Park, and we want all of you to have fun with your family and friends as you celebrate Memorial Day weekend. But in between the fun, we really hope that you'll stop and think about what Memorial Day is really all about, and that's remembering and honoring our soldiers, our men, our women who fought and died in wars in the protection of our nation. Think about them while you're having some fun as you welcome in the summer. And now, back to the studio and the gang.
And a great job, as always, by Mr. Unger, and a great message as well. And I just was reflecting as you were saying that. My grandfather's brother was killed in World War II on a boat that crashed, and they wrote a book about this, a boat that broke, I'm sorry, a ship, I should say, that crashed into a German submarine. And then the Germans got out, and it was hand-to-hand combat on the deck, and he got killed in that crazy battle. I got to get the book. I got to remember. But yeah, so you just made me remember that. I'm like, oh, you know, that was my grandfather's brother. I mean, that was close to him, right? I never met my grandfather. But still, two things to take away from that package. One, Rick wears jeans. He's wearing them right now. Okay, that's why we got this new table to block that out. And everybody that's in New York's Bryant Park is from New Jersey.
You noticed that, yeah.
The Bridge and Tunnel crowd.
And amazingly, seem to believe me when I say Captain James Memorial is the reason we have Memorial Day.
Yeah, but you know what? You gave them so many facts that I'm sure that they were like, this
sold
can't
it
be
well.
false.
That was the idea.
That's the point.
You definitely sold it well. But I'll confess, what we read right before we tossed to your package, I didn't know the true genesis
the real story
of it,
actually,
right?
Yeah.
You know, I just figured it was just taken up some time, probably after World War II, and ever since then we've celebrated.
You're all going to make fun of me for saying this, but I do still remember when it was called Decoration Day.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, seriously.
Decoration Day. Same day? Was it always...
No, it was the same day. It was the last Monday
wasn't it
in the
May
month.
30th? Though,
Well, no, it's always the last
Oh,
Monday in
okay.
the month, and it was Decoration Day because what they used to do, and it actually goes back to before the Civil War, people would go to the cemetery, they would have a religious service, and then they would lay out a picnic, and they would decorate the graves
At the
with flowers.
cemetery.
Yes,
Oh.
and that's why it was called Decoration Day, and it actually feeds off of other cultures, Day of the Dead in Mexico and others.
Just 10 seconds. Did anybody generally get the question right?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually. They were no fun to put in there, but you'd be surprised how many people did know.
Really? Okay, good, because I was about to be horrified. I weep for our future, as they said in Ferris Bueller. Anyway, coming up next, the Duggar family has a problem, but don't worry, Governor Mike Huckabee is sticking by him. This is the Daily Wrap. And thought we were coming in with a sop, but here we are. That is...
It's a holiday. Growing up, I mean, you know, my siblings, like all others, you know, we were best friends and we were worst enemies at times, you know. It's like you have these, you know, sort of the beauty of closeness. You get to know.
That is Josh Duggar from the hit show 19 Kids and Counting. That's on TLC. Shocking revelations now have prompted TLC to cancel the show indefinitely. It's on hiatus, meaning it ain't coming back probably. It's not immediately clear whether the show has been totally canceled officially, however. We have to throw in that disclaimer. The move comes after the Duggar's oldest son, 27-year-old Josh, whom you just saw, acknowledged molesting underage girls 12 years ago when he was just a teenager. Duggar has resigned from his post as executive director of the Conservative Family Research Council. Today on Facebook, 2016 Republican hopeful Mike Huckabee, a friend of the family, surprisingly defended the Duggars, writing, and we quote, "Josh's actions when he was an underage teen are, as he described them himself, inexcusable. But that doesn't mean unforgivable. those who have enjoyed revealing this long ago sins in order to discredit the Duggar family have actually revealed their own insensitive bloodthirst, for there was no consideration of the fact that the victims wanted this to be left in the past, and ultimately a judge had the information on file destroyed, not to protect Josh, but to protect victims. Does Mike Huckabee have a point? Is there a bloodthirst out there to knock down the Duggar family, Lisa Jandovitz?
I think that there are people that are happy that this is happening. On the other hand, though, I don't think Mike Huckabee should have said anything in this case. And the reason is we're talking about these young girls, 4 of them were his siblings, were molested. Now, he was 14 years old. I'm not saying that that's not forgivable, but these are people that have been very successful with their show, and they've made their success by saying that, you know, it's their family and their values, and they have also spoken very vocally against gay people and gay marriage, as has Mike Huckabee. So on the one hand, you're saying that people who are gay are sinners. On the other hand, I would think that Mike Huckabee perhaps should have spoken out in support of the victims, as opposed to this young boy. You know, whether it was done it was done in the past, but I don't think he should be speaking out in support of him.
So Heather, in Mike Huckabee's world, Beyonce bad, Josh Duggar, give the guy a pass.
Yeah, I mean, I think in his mind, because he has repented, and that, you know, there is a big part of the Christian faith is forgiveness and penance and all of that. So I'm sure that that's where he's going with this. But I agree wholeheartedly with Lisa that, you know, he tried to talk about the victims and how we should be siding with the victims. But for thousands of victims out there who have gone through similar things, even the talk of this brings up a trauma, and then to have somebody just wipe it off is just not acceptable.
From a political perspective, and Lisa brought this up before, don't you just let sleeping dogs lie here? That even if you say it's a friend of the family, and yes, he has repented and he should be forgiven, just don't say anything, because no one probably was expecting Mike Huckabee to say anything here anyway.
He would have been wiser not to. I guess if you want to look at it a different way, you can say he's a stand-up guy for standing up for some friends. But I got to tell you, I am far less focused on the TV show and far more focused on the fact that this young man was the executive director of the Family Research Council. You will not find a more judgmental conservative organization on the planet than the Family Research Council. Now, this guy has been out there judging gay people and on and on and on and on, knowing that he himself had made some pretty awful errors at one time in his life. Everybody is redeemable. Everybody deserves a second chance. But what you're supposed to learn from your terrible mistakes is to have some concern for others who may be doing something that you don't agree with. That's what makes me a little crazy.
And transparency as well.
So much about this is so hypocritical. You know, those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I mean, and yet it is. And the thing that it's such a disservice to the Christian faith when you have people who are out there presenting themselves as Christians that have this type of thing
These
happen.
are people who they don't kiss each other until they're married. They only do side hugs when they're engaged, and that's how they've presented themselves. That we believe very much in the sanctity of the, you know, our family, our marriage, and our family, and this and that. And fine if you're going, but then you have this in your own family.
You're going to fall harder.
Right.
When you're that judgmental.
And TLC knew about this beforehand. Yes,
that right?
The reports that I've read. I should not
not
say that as fact. But when you deal with reality shows, the problem is you're going to deal with very imperfect people, right? Like in Duck Dynasty or any the Kardashians. It doesn't matter what political affiliation that you are. Honey Boo Boo. Exactly. So yeah, you get interesting people on. They're going to work cheap, and you can create your own episodes. You don't have to write anything. But this is
you also have to take note, by the way, that the Family Research Council, again, the most judgmental organization you can imagine, made this guy go away the day it was revealed. How much compassion did they have for even one of their own?
And before, again, he was an adult or even close to it at 14 years old. It's tricky, but if I was Huckabee, I would have just
kept quiet.
Kept quiet, because now the headline is supports child molester. Oh, good grief. Coming up next, Lisa and Heather have some potluck to serve. This is the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Each night we invite our panelists to come up with a story that they want to talk about, their favorite story as it were, and we call it potluck. And tonight, Lisa and Heather are serving up some stories of their own, so we're going to go with I can't say alphabetical because J is after H. You wear glasses, you get to go first. Boom, go.
Boom, go.
Well, this is graduation season, and if you are attending a graduation at one of our country's universities or colleges, you will most likely hear from a liberal speaker at commencement. Now, this is actually, and it's not surprising, but when you listen to the survey that was done recently by Young America's Foundation, by nearly 6-to-1, commencement speakers are liberal speakers. And even in light of the fact that conservatives overwhelmingly won the election, the midterm elections, no elected conservative official was invited this year to speak at a commencement. And also, when George W. Bush was in office, 14 Bush officials were asked to speak, were invited to give commencement speeches during that 8-year period. 9 Obama officials were invited just this year alone. Now, the question, it actually, when we talk about colleges and universities, these are young people, our future leaders, and colleges and universities should really be all about inclusion, diversity, opening minds, and that just gives more reason. It seems to make sense to have a little bit more equality in terms of who is coming to speak. And unless Rick has
I was just going to say, your point is what?
my point is that this shouldn't be this way. In other words,
Well,
there
but
should be more.
Do you know why it is?
Well, because I guess the colleges, the presidents pick.
No, they pick people that the students want to hear. And let me take this back to a point I made earlier in the show. This is why these kids will not be voting for Marco Rubio. They aren't conservatives. They may grow up to be conservatives, but they aren't yet.
The kids are not choosing the speakers, though.
But they choose
the faculty.
Right,
but the faculty is overwhelmingly
choose, right,
Democratic.
exactly.
I understand, but they choose the ones the kids want to hear. They don't want to pick people that the kids go, yawn, I don't want to go to graduation.
Okay, but the faculty picked Condoleezza Rice at Rutgers,
Yeah.
and then students protested.
A
But
very,
the faculty,
very small fraction.
What
And they-
happens,
and she- and
that's what
she-
happens
and
when
she
you
left.
pick people
But
that
why
they don't
shouldn't
want to
they-
hear.
Yeah,
But I
but
think
that's
that
Who's
it's
they, though?
Again, it's a
There's
vocal
30
minority,
kids
a minority,
protested in that
again,
case.
a
Well, yeah,
vocal
but-
minority. And I think that a lot of the people who are conservative on college campuses are afraid to say
They-
so.
they
There's
are.
a real problem with free speech on college campuses
They weren't afraid
right
to
now.
say so when I was at college.
Well,
I
They
knew
are, because my daughter
conservatives.
was at she graduated last year from Fordham, and she used to say to me, Ma, I can't speak out that I'm conservative.
What did she think would happen to her?
She did. She would be made fun of. She would be spoken to as if she was ridiculous for having conservative viewpoints. How could you believe in?
Well, that's not good.
How could you? And
But
that,
she
that
ought to do
happened-
it anyhow,
And that
precisely
happened
for
to
that
her.
reason.
And so and as a young female, she became often intimidated to speak vocally about it.
I think in the end, it's not so much a political thing. They want to hear from celebrities.
Yeah,
They
I
want to
think
hear
that's
from the big
Yes.
guns. Like
Very
you
true.
get Oprah
John
there.
Bon Jovi is at Rutgers this year, and at
They got Bon
Camden.
Jovi?
Yes.
They had Snooki speak one time, but not at graduation. Some speech they paid her
So much for a
$100,000
Yeah.
for.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes,
the
they
Snooki.
did.
Oh my
They did.
gosh.
And her
Yeah,
speech
yeah.
was, live life to the fullest and go get drunk tonight.
Who did you have at your graduation?
Jim Henson.
Who did you have?
Don't remember.
Who did you have?
Mario Cuomo.
Oh, I had Jack Nicklaus.
Wow, that's
Wow.
Because he's a Buckeye.
Because he's a Buckeye.
And he grew up in Ohio, and he's built about
He went
1,000
to
golf
Ohio
courses there.
State, yeah.
That's right, Heather.
cool. My potluck is a little bit less happy, and it's about the recent murder in Washington D.C. and we've caught the perpetrator. Thank goodness. It was a case where a gentleman, that's loose term, went to someone's
Alleged
home.
perpetrator.
Alleged perpetrator. Well, we've got the alleged perpetrator. Well, no, okay. So he went to these people's house and stayed with them for 2 nights and kidnapped them and ordered pizza during that period of time and then killed them and set the house on fire. And the pizza had DNA on it, and through that DNA they were able to catch him, and he's now been charged with first-degree murder. There's a couple of issues that came up with this case that I just thought were interesting as far as just system-wide issues.
Don't eat pizza?
No, pizza is not the problem. Although the DNA thing is very interesting because I think all states now have a rule that if you are convicted of a crime, your DNA is taken and it's saved so that you can then be in the system. Because 70% of crimes are committed by 6% of criminals. When you think about that and the repetition there, it's really important to save this DNA. However, it's not in all states. A lot of states, if you're arrested, you don't get your DNA taken. So I think that's one thing that we need to fix. The other thing that amazed me is 5 years ago, this same guy showed up at the person who was ultimately died, his place of work, with a machete and a beer. And he pled to an open container infraction as opposed to having some sort of a conviction or something for the machete. And when we talk about criminal justice reform, it just seems to me that a lot of people who are smoking pot maybe can get out of jail, so we can put people with machetes into jail.
I just want to say, absolutely brilliant police work by the police there.
absolutely.
Kudos to them. Incredible work.
And it tells you, eat the crust, because it was on the crust. It wasn't on the other part, obviously.
doubt.
Repeat that stat once again before we go to break.
70% of crime is committed by 6% of
That's
the
amazing.
criminals.
Right.
Wow.
Something to consider. Anyway, coming up next, it's yay or nay. Happy time. Stick around. It's happy time, people. When you hear that theme, it must be time for yay or nay. Well, here's an ironic tale. Saudi Arabia, which doesn't have the best record regarding human rights, would like to run the Human Rights Council at the United Nations. If you remember, just a few days ago, Saudi Arabia was advertising for an executioner that would carry out, well, executions based on Islamic law. Good idea to have Saudi Arabia on the Human Rights Council, Mr. Unger.
You can't write this stuff. You
We
know?
actually just did.
Well, I mean, you couldn't make it up. It's unbelievable.
Not even
really
on it.
is.
They want to head the whole
I
thing.
know. You got to love that. Nah, I'm thinking maybe it's not the best idea, but I really give them points for some great comedy work.
That's a very good point. You've driven on Saudi Arabia before, haven't you? Oh no, you can't. I forgot.
Why can't? Oh, that's right.
That's
you
right.
can't.
I'm a
drive.
woman. Can't do much there.
Yeah.
The arrogance. Like, do they not know that they're violating human rights? I mean, it is just beyond my comprehension that they would want that position, that they would truly believe that it's an appropriate thing. It's just unbelievable.
I really thought, and you always make this joke, like, is that in the Onion? I really thought it was the Onion. I had to double check
Right,
and find
right.
another source before I
Yeah.
pitched this to the executive producer.
Right. I guess nay, because they should not be the poster country for human rights, so they can't possibly.
Let's move on. Michael Brown, the young man who was shot by police in Ferguson, Missouri, is getting a permanent paid memorial paid for by taxpayers of the city. Here's a look at what they did. We have a picture. Should the city have paid for a Michael Brown memorial, given all the evidence that was presented to that grand jury that ultimately decided not to move ahead?
I did
Lisa.
not realize that the city was paying for it.
Yeah.
So that makes a difference. I now have to readjust. I was surprised. I thought that
It was a privately paid-
yes,
nope.
which would be different. Given that fact that this police officer was exonerated, I'm not sure that the city should be paying for it.
No, we've always said that that story turned into something that it really wasn't. The facts did not sustain what the tale that it became with the hands up, don't shoot and everything, and this is just another symbol of that.
I'm a little confused. I'd almost like to go back and see the plaque because I
We
read.
put it back up, boys?
It said, I would like the memory of Michael. So who wrote that? That's not something a city would write.
No.
That's
This
true.
is something personal. So I really wonder about whether the city did pay for that. It's just a personal message, so I don't get it.
We will have our crack staff
Yeah.
in the control room look up exactly who wrote the epitaph and hopefully have an answer for you by the end of this segment and show, for that matter. The View on ABC has problems. The one-time juggernaut created by Barbara Walters that owned daytime TV is sinking very fast. Vanity Fair reporting today the show is in a fight for survival. Rosie Perez hadn't been there for a month, just returned recently, according to Rick Unger, who has the inside scoop, or just watches the show every day. Rosie O'Donnell quit the show altogether. Ratings are at their lowest ever. So can The View, which has been on for nearly 2 decades, survive without adding Heather Hansen to its panel? Rick Unger.
It depends what ABC has in pilot and in reserve. If they got something, it could be in trouble. If they got nothing, it'll be back.
Okay.
There's so many other shows like that on now. The Talk is doing very, very well, and it depends on the
Beats it,
chemistry
actually.
of the group. So they've got to get together a much better group to make it work.
Lisa, are panel shows where people sit around a table and talk about stuff dying?
Do you know
I don't
something?
think so. I don't think
Something you want to tell us at this time before the holiday weekend?
Moving on, we have been talking a lot about age lately, and 37-year-old actress Maggie Gyllenhaal was turned down to play the role of a girlfriend to a 55-year-old man. Why? Because producers said she was too old. Because she was too old. Maggie told TheWrap.com, there are things that are really disappointing about being an actress in Hollywood that would surprise me all the time, she told The Wrap. I'm 37 and I was told recently I was too old to play the lover of a man who is 55. Is it not believable that a 50-something man would find a 30-something-year-old woman who was too old for him besides a guy who's named George Clooney, Mr. Unger?
I've never try to explain my past. I don't get that either. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It does make me think that a producer didn't want to tell her the real reason and kind of fake
She's an outstanding
I don't
actress.
think so.
Yeah,
No,
I
it's society. It's just, and it's getting better, I think. But they would never put an older woman unless the movie
She's
was about
37 with a 55-year-old. That's
I
not
think she's a
bad.
different looking kind of 37 though.
Yeah.
Jennifer Aniston's 45 and looks
Yeah, they probably
30.
do
But
it.
ageism is still a huge problem in Hollywood. I mean, we see this all the way. I think if you speak with a number of actresses, they'll over 40, they'll tell you the
It's
same
true.
thing.
Panel, thank you very much. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Stay tuned for Newsmax Prime with JD Hayworth. Good night, everybody.